Hi guys, welcome back to My Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. I'm dead excited again. We have got another day for an interview. I've got Guna Rasnaca here. Guna is a woman who has gone through her own challenges, as so many of my guests, and nowadays is a woman who's passionate about working with trauma victims and turning the victim into an empowered state rather than staying in that what happened to me. So the past does not equal the future, very literally. And here's a woman who uses the whole holistic approach to help patients to transition, to move on, to transform like the phoenix out of the ashes. And it is so beautiful to have Guna here on my show. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Guna. Good welcome.
Thank you, Stefan. I'm really excited to be on your show because, as you know, sobriety as well is a theme really close to my heart, and it's a huge part of trauma work.
Isn't it? Because trauma is one of the core things in our life that we hate. We absolutely hate as humans. We move away from pain and we want pleasure, the reward system that we have got. These are the two basic things. And there is so much pain out there. There's so much trauma out there in every single life. And I think it's quite important, guys, when we talk about trauma, you don't have to have been on the battlefield and seen your best friend ripped apart in front of your eyes. Yes, that's trauma. Okay, I give you that. Hell yeah. But trauma means so many different things for so many different people. We all have got our trauma, and it's not a competition, okay? It's not who has got the most blood spilled or something like that. But trauma can come in many shapes, forms, color. And please, it is whatever the trauma is for you. If you have you felt in times when you were hopeless and powerless, well, let's call that the trauma and let's work on that basis. Okay, this is not highly specific PTSD following major road traffic accidents or something like that. All of you are invited in this show. Okay, we all have had our trauma. Guna, have I set the scene right there? I think
exactly. Very well said. Very precisely said. Because this is one of the main things I want to inform people as well. That the misunderstanding about the trauma, we tend to think that trauma is something that happened, either some violence or something that happened, or something that even didn't happen that should have happened. But the trauma is actually what because of that happened within, in a biological, psychoneurological sense. It happened within. So it's not the event what caused, it's the reaction on some overwhelming event. So it means anyone has trauma, and trauma is a natural part of life. It's how we grow. We are supposed to have trauma to overcome it, and when we stay stuck with it, that's where the problem starts, and that's where I can help.
It's just brilliant, isn't it? And guys, if you think, why do you go to the pictures? Why do you go into a cinema? If you see what happens to the heroes, if you break it down into a 3-act story arch, there's always a trauma there. And we want to see how this hero is overcoming that trauma. So there we are. We are actually going to theaters in order to see trauma. So yet when it happens in our own life, oh my God. It is such a strange thing. And I guess it comes with the fact that we as human beings don't like negative emotions. And many of us have never learned how to deal with these emotions, the sheer fact that there needs to be a certain acceptance there. And that's probably the hardest thing, isn't it?
That is the hardest thing on all levels. It's so interesting that you're bringing this up, actually, because I just watched another interview with Dr. Gabor Mate, and there is a lot of speculation. So you brought this up. We are interested in trauma. Trauma is intertwining our lives. We have all this trauma bonding. Most of our relationships, in the case if we have unresolved trauma, are based on trauma bonding. So trauma defines all parts of our life, and we have this huge denial because it is painful. It is something that takes a lot of courage, that takes a lot of honesty to really face it. And from the mainstream medical point of view, there is this huge controversy because there's a lot of research about the effects of childhood trauma on physical and mental health and on addictions and etc. Just to mention ACEs, adverse childhood experience studies, and more and more. And when all these studies are brought in front of doctors, there is this no, this doesn't exist. And there is this theory we like to believe that it's because of big pharma, but I rather like another more compassionate and human compassionate explanation of this, because it means if they have to face the trauma, they have to face their own trauma. And when it comes to us facing our own trauma, it takes a lot of courage. And if we are safe in some kind of a comfort bubble, we don't want to go and do it. And unless we don't have this necessity, unless there is the crisis, we deal with it only once there is a crisis. And health crisis, relationship crisis, or any kind of crisis. So this is why all the mainstream science field, medical field, is in such a huge denial around the trauma, and there is this resistance. Just the same thing, like any human. Okay, trauma. Well, it's not my case. Trauma, it's somewhere else, and that's a very one thing that's really I don't know even how to say. Yeah.
I think your sentiment comes through, and it is something. I bring up my own example. I was the victim of a gang violence, and I was around about 13, and I was shocked to the core by it. And there was very much a chance that night that I could have died. There were all the things that you need to define trauma in a real PTSD sense. Yet, within a month, 2 months, 3 months, I had transformed that negative image into a driving factor in my life to have situational awareness, to become a martial artist, to work out really hard. That had the flow-on effect that I had a really great body, which had the flow-on effect that I got the girls, and so on and so on. So it was actually a positive thing. So for a long time, my mind worked with all that as positive, because that was the psychological trick that my mind has used to push the pain aside and have something positive out of it, make sense out of it. It took many, many decades for me to realize that many of my problems down the line were essentially hallmarks of PTSD. The flashbacks, the huge adrenaline response to simple stimuli, the constant awareness, the 3 o'clock in the morning waking up, all these kind of things. So it was amazing. So that lesson I only learned about 18 months ago, when a friend of mine with battlefield PTSD went through it and got himself better with the help of a coach and hypnosis. And it was amazing to see his transformation. And only by me then clicking onto it did I become aware of that being actually the trauma that it was. For 30 years, 30 years, something thereabout, I had hidden it from myself. And therefore, you're so right. The awareness needs to come first before you can deal with it. Once I had the awareness, then suddenly within 3 sessions with this coach, done, dusted, ticked. And the mixture of the hypnosis plus my own ability to think about it. But had I not made that leap, I would have had the ongoing sleep problems, I would have had the ongoing hyperactivity, etc., with the flow-on effects. So therefore, guys, trauma is there in each life. And I mean, that happened to me 13, but what you're describing when it happens in childhood, it's even more powerful that it is completely covered over, dug in. So how many of the clients that you have got would you say that childhood trauma plays a significant role in?
I work a lot mostly with complex trauma. So complex trauma is, by definition, it starts in childhood, and then it attracts more and more and more trauma. There is this phenomena of, once being abused, we develop these coping mechanisms that make us vulnerable to this abusive energy, that make us, there is like this sensation, why all the bad things keep on happening with me? Because we are vibrating in this victim energy. We are having already these limiting beliefs. I am bad. I am not loved. I will be hurt. Something bad will happen with me. And as a child, for example, as a child who has no one to go to, we it's something that can be sensed energetically. It's known about pedophilia, for example, that pedophiles would go to the child who have no one to go to, who are easy to talk to, who are lonely, who are insecure, and so there is this. One thing causes next thing. It's a chain reaction. So yes, it goes. Sometimes we can come to me with something that's seemingly very distant and unrelated from any childhood trauma. Normally, to get to the childhood trauma, it takes many years. It takes years in therapy, it takes years in psychoanalysis, it takes years of work to untangle it down to the childhood trauma. Unless if we go straight to a trauma worker and we are intending to work with our trauma to get our health in a better state. Yeah, so
You're quite right, and you're pointing so much to the link between trauma and your body, because they are not two distinct things. In the Western medicine, for a long time, we have treated symptoms and used symptoms to find disease. So that's what we do. You come with pain there, and I say, is it really there or there? Well, it's actually there and goes into my jaw and into my left arm when I do exercise. Okay, that's angina. That's a heart problem. That's how we work as doctors. And so therefore, when you come with symptoms that are very vague and all over the show, however disabilitating, I'm lacking the words. Debilitating, thank you. However bad they are for you and stop your growth and stop you in your path, if we can't make sense out of it, some doctors are tempted to just say, it's all in your head. Actually, they are right. It is actually all in your head, but not in a negative way that we sometimes describe it. But it is actually the root cause for it all is in your head. It is the trauma. It is what your mind has made out of it and how it now keeps working with behavioral patterns that probably are not so clever for you. For example, if you have always been this insecure, shy person and you had that trauma added into that, and then suddenly when you're 16 or so, someone at a party gives you your first glass of wine, and suddenly you think, oh, that's good. Well, because of the trauma, because of what has happened to you, and you have not even begun to even figure out how it all is related, you find that drink really, really, really nice because it takes away that pain. It takes away that thing. So therefore, there you are. Suddenly down the line, you end up with all the problems of liver failure and whatsoever. Real good medical problems. But if you actually tease them back and tease them back, tease them back, then you have got the trauma that is setting you up to fail from an early time. And that's where you come in.
Yeah, and that's a long way, long distance, really long distance from you are having this organ failure at one end, and how far is something? It's not easy to make the link to make the connection.
No.
And you're saying it's in the head. You're saying it's in the head. Well, it's in the brain, and the brain, the neuronal path networks are It turns out that they are around the heart. It turns out that they are around the gut. Yeah. So it's in the head. It's in here. It's in here. It's in the end. It's very much everywhere. It's in. And this story in the head and in the body, this is how I learned about the mind and body connection, because I had no knowledge about this. I learned it in the hard way. I was having a lot of mental issues when I was young due to trauma. So soon it's going to be published, all my story, for people if they're curious to find out more. And so I was in the beginning, I was in therapy. I was for years in the therapy, and the psychosomatics went really, really bad. I started to have fibromyalgia and psoriasis many years after being in therapy. So I was in therapy and I was having all these psychosomatic symptoms, and a therapist would say, you need to go to see a doctor because this is something I can't help you with. You are having these organs and these pains. It's something physical. And I would go to see a doctor with this something physical like psoriasis and fibromyalgia, and the doctor would say, at that point, when I had it, it wasn't even considered, it was not recognized as an illness, fibromyalgia. It was the combination of symptoms. It was a few years ago. 7 years ago, and they would say, "Oh, it's in the head, so you should go to therapy. We can't really help you." And then I understand that none of them can really help me. Well, they want to help me. They both want to treat me, and they give me really harmful drugs that didn't help me. And I had to look at. My therapist, thankfully, really did make this connection that it is linked with trauma. And so I was looking into trauma, physically, somatic, what to do. I was searching until I found these trauma release exercises.
Which is brilliant. Teach us more. I mean, that was your story, obviously, and that is you were searching and you came across something. Now, psoriasis, for those of you who don't know, it is a chronic itchiness and inflammation of the skin, which often turns scaly and is very irritated and can be quite debilitating and frustrating for a woman, because obviously her skin changes and then you've got all that negative flow and effect of that. And sometimes psoriasis is then associated also with joint pain and other pains. Fibromyalgia means it's a widespread inflammation of the muscular system. In other words, every bloody muscle hurts. And if you were to push on certain points, people with fibromyalgia are screaming in pain. And they're called trigger points, and we can use them to make a diagnosis together with the various other symptoms that go along with fibromyalgia. So just to lay the medical background there. But both of these diseases can be debilitating, can be actually have their own harmful flow-on effects. And there is a strong link between these diseases and psychological trauma or psychological upheaval. So when there is significant stress coming on, things get worse. And if you can look after yourself, often things get better. So therefore, I'm so interested to hear you saying, I found these trauma release exercises. That was your first step into the right direction. What did you find there, and what did you do?
I found testimonies on the internet, because with fibromyalgia there is supposedly nothing to do, and psoriasis, as you explained, this was not my case. I had this rare type of psoriasis, the psoriasis guttata. When I had the whole skin was open, it was like all totally open, and it was wet and was not closing. Yeah, and I had face and arms, and it was extremely painful and extremely debilitating, and all around the mouth, and the fibromyalgia is just pain, constant strong pain 24/7, and it just makes you crazy. It makes you depressed. You can't do anything. It's you are like, I imagine that maybe a very sick 90 years old person would be feeling like this, but yeah, I was 33 at that time. I was looking for, because this is an autoimmune condition and psoriasis as well, so I was really searching for autoimmune condition. I was learning about how come this connection, how come the trauma, how come the emotional part, how come that stuff that I had even forgotten the things. So I was 8 years in psychoanalysis to untangle, to face my traumas, because I was not even aware. I thought I had a happy childhood. I thought I have no trauma. I have no reason to have a depression. I have no reason. The funny thing is that I didn't know that I was anxious, because I was anxious since I remember myself. And when I started to learn about these symptoms and anxiety and description, and I was like, but this is my normal state. And I was like, wow, okay, this is supposedly not normal. All right. This was the state where I was due to my childhood experiences. And I mean, my childhood experiences, I was not badly treated. I was not, I didn't suffer any physical violence. I did suffer sexual abuse, but I had no memory of it. So it was like I hadn't had any of that. My parents were loving in their own ways. So trauma, it's something very often misunderstood what it is. So to make those links, to link the dots, to get to where from, basically, if there is an autoimmune condition, then we really must look into what has happened and look into do an investigator's work and think. We don't remember we don't recollect in the part of the memory where we recollect. We don't have the recollection of those events. That would be the most normal. The brain is protecting us, but our body is showing signs. Our relationships are showing signs. Our behavior is showing signs. For example, if we are overly kind, if we have this type of personality where we would do everything for everyone else but not for ourselves. We would care about everyone and for everything at the expense of our own well-being, in incapacity to say no, and this is what will then react in these autoimmune conditions. And sometimes it's not autoimmune conditions. Sometimes it is an accident. Sometimes people break a leg to stop. Sometimes people really have these kind of life stopping accidents as well. And there is this story behind why did they get there? Why did that happen?
And it's a big entanglement, isn't it? It is. So there is no, if you could just somehow press the pause button, have a quick look and say, oh, look, that happened because of that, and because of that, see, easy, done. And it doesn't work like that, does it? It is hard work to follow that path and explore trauma. And I guess that is where someone experienced like you comes in, because certain parts of psychology work on going more in depth psychoanalysis, as you mentioned, etc. Whilst the field of trauma counseling and trauma dealing with complex trauma specifically seems to have taken leaps and bounds and is focusing far more on much faster ways of illuminating and showing the links, and then showing you ways how to go on about it. To let me go one step back, if there are skeptics out there and think, oh, that's all mumbo jumbo, here you were with your hands completely rough, your face was rough, around your mouth was psoriasis. Guys, there is no amount of makeup that you can put on to hide that. And look at Guna now. So something has happened, okay? So either she has got a body double, a stunt double, and which is probably unlikely, or she has changed in a way that this autoimmune problem, the psoriasis, has disappeared. Huh. So there's maybe something there. Fibromyalgia, do you still suffer from pain?
No, no pain.
Interesting. Rest assured, any fibromyalgia sufferer out there will tell you fibromyalgia doesn't just go away. And of course, you could now say, hang on, maybe you didn't have fibromyalgia. Maybe you just had a viral infect that for a few months gave you a thing. So skeptics will always come up with something. And yes, if you want to ride that skeptic train, be my guest. This is your choice. No one forces you to look into such links. And I do admit that looking into such links is painful. So therefore, if you were to explore the reason for, in this case, your pain, well, there's more pain waiting, just a different kind of pain when you actually start working with your negative emotions and with the trauma that is inside of you. I think we need at this stage maybe to say one more thing: the explicit and implicit memories. When it comes to memories, there are those memories that you very clearly can remember right now. Oh yeah, yesterday I had this beautiful meal. Well, that's an explicit memory. It's there for you just to tap into. What did I eat yesterday? Oh yeah, lovely steak with salad. Cool, explicit. There are certain memories that are hidden, and they're just underneath the surface that we can't tap into until we learn techniques to do so, or until someone else does it for us. And these are called implicit memories. And there's so many of them deep down in our heads. And that is sort of often enough where actually the truth comes out and where people start exploring. And that is certainly something that you and your clients do a lot, isn't it? To actually you move away from the explicit and try to find a bit more out, dig deeper, etc.
Yeah, so the implicit memories, they are not only in the head, they are all over in the body. They are, this expression that we use a lot in yoga, issues are in the tissues. Issues really are in the tissues. And this is why this somatic work, somatic practices, somatic modalities have turned out that are the most effective for the trauma work. There are Stephen Porges is doing researches right now, And on this recent conference, embodiment conference, he was sharing the results that are not yet published, and even the good results on autism, and he has been collecting information from trauma workers and asking what is the most effective, and everyone is agreeing that the most effective approaches are the somatic approaches, because this is the easiest way to access those implicit memories, to release the trauma from the tissues without even needing to go cognitively to them. And you were mentioning that, so my psoriasis and the fibromyalgia, they did left because I did go to the trauma work, and it can be really painful to go to do that trauma work, and we don't really naturally go there, and we don't really want to go there unless we have a problem, unless we have a mental or physical condition, unless something brings us to go to do that work. And it's really tricky, because there's this one side, all right, I'm having this physical problem, so I will work now on my trauma, and I will now go and do this challenging and it's work, and it's not easy, and we just don't want to face it, and we rather don't look at it, and we pretend it doesn't exist, and we all do that. It's natural. But my experience was a little bit other way around, and this is why a lot of therapists are speaking of this phenomena of re-traumatization, which can happen in talk therapy. So I was for 8 years in psychoanalysis with my mental problems, with my relationship problems, and I was undoing. I was for 8 years on the couch, lying on the couch, and undoing and going back and reliving and reliving it and reopening and going back in there. And this is all what you do in psychoanalysis. You just go there. You just go in there, and then you hope that by some kind of a magic, the thing will somehow, because you kind of are going there, because you are present, because you are now adult, you can kind of hold yourself, and the thing will go. Even in psychoanalysis, you don't have the support by a therapist. No one is really explaining you what to do, how to hold you. So you can easily end up being in a very classical talk therapy. Okay, psychoanalysis is really good because it is investigating and going really deep. So you can uncover through this work, you do uncover things that you didn't remember. You dig and you dig and you dig and you open that thing. But the thing is, I digged, I opened, I found myself now. I have been sexually assaulted at the age of 5. I'm having all these things on my hands, all these complex trauma. There was this trauma, then there was the next one, then there was the next one, then there was this, then there was this. I came to the therapy because of abusive relationship. I started from I'm in an emotionally abusive relationship, and it's not the first one. I have been, and I'm working with this in my analysis. And so it turns out that there is this trauma, and 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 I'm just there with all this trauma now, and all this on my system. What my analyst helped me to understand when I started to have fibromyalgia was at the point where I did manage to get out of the abusive relationship I was in. When I was in a safe place, it was then that fibromyalgia started. So I have this impression that digging and digging and digging, opening all those wounds, in my case, it really killed all my resistance, all my coping mechanisms, and my autoimmune system got, what's going on? SOS, let's save us, and it all just cracked down. What's happening in all autoimmune diseases, and so this was where I started to look into how can I then work? Because I was really conditioned in this classical approach, mainstream approach. So you have a problem in head, you go to a therapy. You have a problem with the body, you go to a doctor. And I was like, okay. And I'm really a person with a huge head. I love analysis. I think all the time. If I wouldn't force myself to do other activities, I think my head would explode. I'm such a head person. And I love to analyze. I really love to write. I'm thinking constantly, and digging and criticizing and searching and so it turned out that I had abandoned my body, and my body was there with all kind of. I was so much in my head that we uncovered all the trauma, and emotionally, psycho-emotionally, I was having all this load, and what now? And so my body was, no, this is not how this works. You need to do something on the body side too. The first thing what I found was yoga. And not a yoga, not asana, not in a studio. When I went to Sri Lanka to look for Ayurvedic healing, because I had read that Ayurveda can heal autoimmune diseases. That was my last hope at one point. So I left to Sri Lanka in a search for authentic Ayurvedic doctor. So I didn't want to buy into this commercial Ayurveda hotel thing for Germans. Sorry, it's like no, there are, and I was looking for I was going to government hospitals, to seeing many local far away doctors, monks, and Ayurveda has its power definitely, but it couldn't heal what I had because it didn't work on my trauma. But I met a yoga teacher in Ayurvedic resort who, when I had nervous breakdown, there were 5 doctors and there were assistants, and no one knew what to do. And she, a Western girl, Western yoga teacher in Sri Lanka, in Ayurvedic resort, she was the only one who was not panicked by my nervous breakdown. And she came up to me and she did EFT, tapping. She did tapping on me. And in 5 minutes, my nervous breakdown was off. I had never seen something like that. I was like, wow. And it was because she could hold space for this, because she had been working on her own trauma and she was not panicked. This was the thing what we were talking previously about, that when helping professionals don't know this stuff, then when they haven't worked on their own trauma, they are helpless when they're facing this. I have seen so many doctors and so many therapists, both when they were not in a place where they have healed with this heavy stuff on their own, they were panicked, and I felt really bad for them. I was there, please help me, and they were, yes, we will help you. And I was just feeling that they can't help me, and I couldn't trust. It was really, really, really harmful experience, because they were trying to do it, trying to help. They were not helping. It was almost like they were trying to help themselves, and I kept suffering. So it can be a complex journey, but it shouldn't be. So what I'm doing, I'm really trying to share my story. I'm trying to talk about this. I'm trying to educate people about trauma. I'm trying to point out that it is a very root of many mental and autoimmune and all psychosomatic conditions. It's as simple as that. And then and trauma work, it doesn't need to be therapy where you go and you delve into trauma. That's not that at all. That's what is re-traumatizing. If it's not, you need to go there to some extent, but you need to titrate. You need to go to there in this little dosage. the dosage that you are able to hold yourself, that you are able to release, that is not overwhelming, that is not re-traumatizing. So it's a fine art, and less is more in trauma work. And there is this body part. So just going back to the thread where we started. So when I had my body reacting, and I had to change my own attitude, my own paradigm from, no, it's not in head, it's not the therapy, it's not only the psychoanalysis. Okay, psychoanalysis is really good. It helped me to understand that I do have a subconscious mind, that this part of me who is very will-powered and really well intended, and decides that I will not smoke, I will not drink. And then there is this other part who, despite all my efforts and my willpower, will do whatever she wants. And she does. And okay, smoking and drinking would be like the least of that. She would fall in love in emotion with emotionally abusive men. She would get herself in the situations where I don't want her to get herself, where she's getting herself in the situations where she's getting hurt. So that is the important part. But then there is this body part, and so I was like, what to do now? And of course, a therapist, a mainstream conventional approach, everyone is conditioned. We all are trained in these approaches. So they are analysts. So they know all those things, that all those somatic approaches, all those bio something, all that's all woo-woo. That's all wrong. There's only over approach. There's only my therapy. That's only how this works. And okay, that was maybe just my case, and really I don't want to generalize. I know. I'm on every online trauma conference, and I'm really happy that the knowledge is spreading and the awareness is growing, and therapists are going on those conferences and learning, and even doctors are going and even getting trained in quantum coaching therapy and things that could be considered woo-woo, but in the end, they are not, because the science is catching up with these things. Science, quantum, there's this Bruce Lipton biology of belief. So the quantum physics mixed with the biology, explaining how the stem cells is reacting on the environment. So explaining how then the belief is really influencing physically at a quantum level your bodily functions. So it all, in the end, but you must know it really well. You come from conventional, you are a doctor in conventional medicine, so you have been through this conditioning, and it must be like the hardest place for someone in your place to open up and to face this, that there is actually, and I can understand this because I was a lawyer, my first profession. So I was very much in this is like this and this is like this, and I was very how to say, pragmatic and skeptical and etc. But turns out that pragmatic and skeptical is another side of trauma. Because when we traumatize, we become very vigilant. As you know, we are hyper-vigilant, and there is these trust issues, and then we're super pragmatic and skeptical. And so this all is keeping us even more back to, from opening up to that body-mind thing, that's not some kind of woo-woo thing, and actually and then go into all those modalities. I was really scared. I was so safe with my analyst. She was the only one who understood me. She was the only one with whom I could speak, and she didn't support that I should go and find body modalities. So I was on my own. I had to find it on the internet, and it was not available at the time where I was. It's now growing. It's now becoming more and more available. So, well, it's good. It's good. So I'm I suffered from fibromyalgia for 2 years. So I was looking for, I thought it's Lyme disease. I found all possible diagnoses, but and it's gone. So, and then at one point, when I started having it, there was this discussion. They didn't agree that it's a disease, and they didn't agree that it's autoimmune. There were some who were telling straight away it's autoimmune. I was like, yeah, sure, it's autoimmune. And because it makes sense, somehow intuitively made sense. And now it was just this year that the medical society has admitted that fibromyalgia is autoimmune. And I was like, well, yeah, it is autoimmune. It makes sense because I healed trauma and it left. Of course, it's autoimmune then in this kind of. But I mean, I'm not scientific. I'm not a doctor, and I'm talking from my experience.
And that's so important. I think we need to delineate here. The autoimmune diseases are classically diseases where the body starts attacking itself.
Yes.
And it has strong defense mechanisms. So we can measure we can measure the antibodies that attack the thyroid, that attack the joints, etc. The problem is, of course, if you can't really find something there, then it doesn't really fit into that kind of strict autoimmune, because there's the antibody, therefore that happens, okay, that's a disease. When you can't find anything, you just get this generalized inflammation with mildly raised inflammatory markers. Then what is that? You don't know. And the problem is that with many people, if they only have a hammer, well, everything needs to be a nail. And if they cannot move beyond that their own therapy is one of many, or their own solution that they offer is one of many, and that you have to combine them, that's really hard. That's what you had with your psychoanalyst. So it's really, really difficult. I've seen that with acupuncturists, I've seen that with physiotherapists, etc., where there was nearly a religious belief that amongst, for example, psychologists or physiotherapists, drugs are evil. If you've got a painful condition, the only thing that works is the physiotherapy. The only thing that works is the acupuncture. Doesn't matter that there are other things out there. No, we only do that. And that by itself is setting yourself up to fail and setting your patients up to fail. So therefore, that's where I like to hear this combining of the mind techniques, the body techniques, the relaxation, the trauma work, essentially. And with that, you're actually speeding up recovery. With that, you actually are fast tracking symptoms. And if you're in chronic pain, thank you very much. It's not very pretty to be in chronic pain. So if you suddenly can come up with solutions that actually are alleviating the pain, making you feel better, how beautiful is that? And the problem is that it's so multifactorial. So you're quite right. There is very much this mind-body issue. I love it. Your issues are in the tissues. I love that, actually. But at the same token, some of my issues that I had were clearly nutrition related. When I actually changed my nutrition and got the right supplements, suddenly my hay fever got dramatically better. Suddenly my chronic pain that I had disappeared within a month, whilst for a year and a half I could barely walk with fasciculotendinitis. And that was purely nutrition. So I focused on that. But the question, of course, is, whilst I focused on nutrition, did I not do other things as well? Did I not get more physically exercising? Did I not actually deal with some trauma? Did I not do? So whilst in my mind, it was clear when I changed nutrition, there were probably other factors happening at the same time, realizations where suddenly the body and mind axis sort of comes in, and things like that. So it's hard to tease things apart. But I guess what I want to tell you guys out there, there's a lot of work that can be done, and the chance of you getting better is very much there. It will not be one tablet. Here, take this tablet and you're going to be just fine. You do that yoga exercise for 3 hours on a go and you're going to be perfect. No, it doesn't work like that. But if you start actually looking at what's really going on in your body and in your mind, how are they linked up, and then take systematic steps guided by someone who actually has been there, done that, and knows what they are doing, well, that's cool. And wouldn't that be the same thing if you wanted to learn property investing? Would you not find people who are property investors who do really, really well? I've got a huge portfolio, and say, hey, look, can I learn from you? What do you do? How do you go about it? What's your assessment of the property? And then what do you do with the property, and how do you make the money? It's logic, isn't it? But here we are a bit skeptic. Oh, these coaches. Oh, no. They want to make money out of my suffering, or all kind of this kind of weird beliefs. No, it is. Why not ask the people who have gotten better and are now out there and teaching those things that really help them, and are now like catalysts, making lives of so many other people better. And Guna is one of them. So Guna, if people want to actually get in touch with you and learn more about you, how can they do that?
Just before I go to that, you brought up like the most important point to touch on that somehow we didn't. You were speaking about the fact that you changed your nutrition and then you had the effect, but you were questioning maybe it was your physical exercise, maybe there was some trauma work, maybe there was something going on. And that's really the key point of it. What you did, you took yourself some action for yourself. You did. It was not a doctor, it was not a therapist, it was not any kind of a coach, it was not a practitioner, it was you who took the power, it was you who took, okay, I'm going to help myself now, and I'm now making this effort. I'm now making this effort to heal myself with the nutrition. And it could be anything. It could be even lithotherapy. It could be even crystals if you are super woo. This is what happened. I just yesterday spoke with someone who shared with me his psychosomatic accident. He linked it later on with his mother dying, but so he had this pain that appeared suddenly and no one could help. And then a friend showed him do this exercise, a very simple basic exercise, and he did it. No osteopath, no physiotherapist, no doctor, no one could help him. He was in such a pain. And then he did this one simple exercise. That was all what I learned through my journeys, that when we tend to believe that when we are in this victim place where we naturally get, and we tend to believe that, please doctor help me, please therapist help me, please healer help me, please Ayurveda doctor help me, please yoga therapist help me, unless we go to a place, okay, now I'm going to look into this, no one is going to help me, I have to help myself. So I will now just eat this food, this medicine, or I will do this exercise, or I will do chanting, or I will do, it can be really anything. When you give yourself this signal, your body understands, okay, you are here with me. And then that change is really happening. So about nutrition, I could speak more and more, because I went through this phase when I tried to heal my fibromyalgia with nutrition, and it went better for a period, and it didn't, because I didn't do trauma work.
Exactly.
So this is why I have gone through all this nutrition place, because the trauma work, in the end, it's on your autonomic nervous system, and autonomic nervous system is influencing your immunity and your gut functioning. And so your gut is able to, it's intolerant to certain stuff if there is this dysregulation. I was intolerant to gluten and lactose, and once after some long trauma work, I am no longer intolerant. But how this is possible?
Interesting.
because of the
Interesting.
autonomic nervous system,
Yeah,
because it's all linked.
interesting. And you're quite right. You're quite right. And it is because it is such a mess. I think the way forward is actually to simply go out there and start unraveling that ball of string and start pulling somewhere. But don't just start yourself pulling. Maybe find someone who has been there, done that. So coming back to my question, Guna, people will be interested and will want to know, how can they
Yeah,
get hold of
yeah,
you? What
yeah.
kind of work are you doing? Where can we
Oh,
find you out there?
all right. Um, um, but just that, so I will emphasize, you need to help yourself first. Yeah. Only when you want to help yourself first, only then anyone else is going to be able to help you. That was the really key shift moment. So I do have a body approach and I do have a subconscious mind approach, which both are very gentle because I am firsthand know what's re-traumatization. So I'm very careful about that. So it's not going to be any heavy or scary trauma work. It's going to be super subtle and gentle and effective. So there is, and the body, I combine both. If it's acute case, I combine both. If we want to go from a really bad place to a really good place, to post-traumatic growth, out of victimhood, being in charge, being free of pain, having this freedom back of having this power back, and then I would combine the both, but I adapt my programs individually to each one because some people are more in the head. Some people have this big head like me, but some people have this big, big body and they are not at all in head. They're like, oh, I will never go to a therapy. They are not into analyzing. They are not into going in thinking. They are very kinetic. They are maybe they are even sports professionals and they do body therapies and they are very aware on body wise, but very disconnected from the head. So for those, I would have a bigger part for the head and for the opposite one, because we want to go to the balance. The healing is to be in the balance. So if for me, I'm having this big head, I have to work more on the body. And for someone who is very much in the body, we would work more on the subconscious mind and on the mind part. But subconscious mind, so it's not at all like a classical talk therapy. It's we are changing the things on the go. We are changing the limiting beliefs, which is like all the power of permanently releasing trauma, changing the subconscious beliefs at the subconscious mind level. And I can be found on Instagram. My web page is in construction, so it's so on Facebook, on Instagram, and email. It's Guna dot Rasnaca, Guna dot Rasnaca at gmail.com. And but you can find my name on Facebook, on Instagram, and if you
And
have
look down there,
questions,
guys. Look into the description of the video. Look into the description of the podcast,
yeah,
because I will
my
have
name.
included her details in carefully in there. So, Guna, thank you so much for coming onto my show. You illuminated quite a lot of things, and as with every single interview, you leave me with some very interesting questions and realizations. So therefore, for me, it is such a beautiful journey to meet people like you, and hopefully, you guys out there are equally infused and ask yourself what you can do, which decision you can make today to move that little bit closer to loving yourself. And that means also to accepting those things that have happened to you, to actually put a spotlight on it, but not in a traumatic way, as Guna said herself, but rather in a way that allows you to link things up in your head and in your body, and then more importantly, learn something that gets you out of there, that lets you move forward away from the victim status, away from the trauma that has occurred and that is part of our life, but now towards the life where you can grow, where you can be the beautiful yourself that you want to be. And I think for many of us, trauma work goes with that. So you could do far, far worse than checking Guna out and maybe working with her in due course. Guna,
Yeah.
it was an absolute honor to have you on my show.
I think that what you just said is the one thing that anyone can look at them and am I dissatisfied in somewhere in my life? And that's where we start. We start only with some very outer layer, physically or psychologically. And that's how you do. That's what is trauma work. It's not something, oh my gosh, trauma. No. But it's not, it's nothing to be afraid. It doesn't, it's not a veteran PTSD. It's has nothing to do with that. You're basically taking care of your health and your well-being.
So true. So true. Guna, thank you so much for your time, for your passion, for your willingness to be so open about your own journey. I can't wait to see your book, and I'm going to be one of the first ones to read it and review it. So I'm so looking forward to it. Guys out there, thank you very much for tuning in today. It was, again, a great interview. You all out there, look after yourself. And Guna, to you, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you. Bye.
Dream on, dream on.